This is further training in Spectrum Spatial Connect. In this session, we'll show you how to create a crowdsourcing app using SSC. And for this, I'm going to use an example of graffiti reporting. So many local government want to allow members of the public to report things like graffiti and to be able to do that through their mobile devices. So we're going to build this application very quickly using the Spectrum Spatial Connect designer. So we'll first use the designer to build the digital form. We'll see how that operates in the mobile phone environment. Then what we'll do is add in some mapping capabilities so that all those locations of the members of the public that are reporting are now plotted onto a map that people can view. And we'll see how that all comes together back in the application. So members of the public can report graffiti, but also see where other people have reported other graffiti locations, so that we don't get inundated with the same report. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go over to the designer, and I will also show my mobile phone so that you can see how things are coming together. But let's start in the designer first. I'm logged in as the same user, this demo user called Lucy Life, on both environments. And I'm going to create a new application by using this plus button and saying new. This will create a blank canvas. You can see that SSC has defaulted some of the settings. So the title here has been defaulted. If I just click on that title, I can change the settings. So I'll call this Graffiti Reporting App. I'm going to change the status to published. So all that means is that other users can see my application. So by default, only the authors and people that I invite as authors can use the application until it's published. But I'll just switch that over now so that we don't have to do that later. We'll leave the cover image turned off, and I'll leave comments turned off. So comments are the chat capability that you can add into any SSC application. So please, play around with some of these settings and see what they do. But for now, I'm quite happy with those. So I'll go back to my blank canvas. I'm going to add some content here. So I need to add my digital form. So I'm going to pick this application on the palette, and I get this added onto my canvas. And so now, in order to edit it, I use this pencil icon here, and we can go to properties, and here we can change the title of this to say my report. Can jump over to the Fields tab, and I need to start building up my digital form. So I'll add in a select list to begin with, which is just a drop-down option for the user to say whether the incident is on public or private land. The next thing I'm going to do is the all-important offline map capability. So if I drag that field on, this is where we're going to store the GPS location. So this GPS location is called offline map because we are going to use this in an offline way as well. So not only can people report when they're online, but they can also report it when they're offline, and they can even see the map offline as well if I configure it. I won't go as far as the offline tiling in this session, but this is the start of how we start to use those things. But for now, we're just recording the GPS location. Okay, so then a field then to say describe the exact location. Obviously the GPS might take us to a fairly wide area, so we don't want to be hunting around. So we'll get the user to describe the exact location, and then what we'll do is add in another select box to say, is the graffiti offensive or not? Obviously, if it's offensive, we might want to deal with that quicker than if it wasn't offensive. And then because people are walking around with their mobile devices, it's a great opportunity to get them to take a picture of the of the graffiti so that we can see it when this gets submitted into our triage process. So that's all I want to capture about the incident or the report itself. Apart from now, I want to then add a new section. So this header is just going to be used as a new section holder, and I want the user to tell me a little bit about themselves. So they can stay anonymous. Oops, not that one. So they can stay anonymous, but I'm going to ask them to give me their first name, last name, and email address. First name, last name, email address. And if I switch over to the preview tab, you can see my digital form is coming together. SSC is looking after how that renders and can already show me what it might look like when it's finished. But now I need to specialize some of the fields. So at the moment, all of these fields, apart from their title, have the default settings. So if I go and edit the top one, I'll see this little settings dialog, and here I need to be able to give the options to the user. So it's on public land, it's on private land are my two options. And by default, I get a drop-down list for the user to complete. So that's what the basic default setting is. But for this one, I'm just going to change these to be buttons and have text being displayed on the as the options. There's only two, so it makes sense to me. So these two are important. So we need to change the default here. So by default, SSC will say that only the authors of the application can actually enter the data. So that might be important, say, if you have some fields that only the workers or the employees of council or local government can actually use. But in this case, it's a crowdsourcing app, so I'm just going to say that anyone can submit. And this piece here, this field type show in results summary, so this is used after you've submitted the form usually. So after you've submitted the form, we need a way to list the forms in a table, and we need to be able to summarize the contents of that. So does this particular field need us to put it in that metadata that would be in the summary view? And I don't think so, so I'm going to hide it in this case. So just moving on to the next field, anyone can submit. I'm not going to show that in the summary view either. Describe the exact location. So I'm going to say that's plain text to be entered, and anyone again can put that in, but I'm going to hide it in the summary view. Then we've got this select option of whether it's offensive or not, and for this I'm going to have three options. Yes, offensive, the graffiti content is offensive. No, not offensive. And then I'm going to have this sitting on the fence one, some may say offensive. This time I will use the default of just using the drop down, not the buttons option. Incidentally, in there we can also use images as the select options as well. Anyone can submit this. I will show that in the summary view because I think that's important. And then we just move down. Photos. Anyone can submit that. I will allow those to be shown in the summary view. Similarly with first name, show in summary view, and last name. Email address. So I'm going to say anyone can do that and hide it in the summary view. But there's also something I'm going to do here, which is the type of text that's going to be entered. I can tell SSC that this is an email so that it knows to capture it in a certain way. So I've got that setting in here. Other things that I've skipped over are things like help text. So I can give the user a bit of a help. I can give it some placeholder text so that they know the kind of data that needs to be entered in there, and I can also say whether the fields are mandatory or not. So for me, I don't think anything is particularly mandatory apart from maybe the location, and this piece, whether it's private or public land. I won't say that the first name, last name, or email address is mandatory. So that's good, right? So now we've got our digital form. We can see the options building up and so on. So I'll close that settings down, and I'll add a new report just to see what it might do. And you can see straight away it's added this blank row here. So in order to actually fill in the form, I have to go to this pencil and fill it in this way. I think that's not the behavior I'm looking for my application. So what I want to do is whenever I add new, I want it to go straight to this dialog box, and we call this dialog box a modal. And so I'm going to go to properties. On the submit tab, I'm going to say anyone can submit a new submission, and it's going to be using a modal form. Some of the other settings allow us to specialize that as well. So now when I add a new one, it goes straight into the modal dialog box. I'll get rid of that first row, the one that we created earlier. And I think we're ready now to have a look at how it appears on the mobile phone. And I don't need to do anything. I don't need to deploy this to the App Store and get separate approval. The Spectrum Spatial Connect app has already approved, and we're just deploying inside that container. So if I go over to my mobile phone now and hit the Spectrum Spatial Connect option, I can see that my new application has been loaded onto my homepage. Remember, it's the same user between the two environments. If I go to within here, I can add a new one. Is this incident on public or private land? This one is on public land. Describe the exact location. See how it's defaulted my GPS there to my current location. Describe the exact location, and I'm going to say on the roller door entry to the shop. To the library. Is the graffiti offensive or not? No, not offensive. And then I'm going to add in some photos. So I can take a photo right here, but I'm going to choose one from my recents. And there's my offensive or bad graffiti. My name is Andy Moy, so that's gone in. Email address I'll leave blank. But now I've completed my form, I'm going to submit. So watch the desktop on the left-hand side there. I made email address mandatory, so I do need to put that in. Okay, so now I think we're ready to submit. There we go. Okay, so you see how it's updating. It's loading that photo up to the server. That's why it took slightly longer than before. But straight away on the left-hand side, we can see our new report has come in, and it's displayed it inside the desktop application. And that would be true. So if you've got thousands of users submitting, then we can display them all in a summary form like this. And I'll show you how we build the map later. But I'm not entirely impressed with the way that my submissions are listing there in the summary view. So you see how it's using this table format to show the results. If I go into properties and go to the results tab, I can actually change the way that it's showing things. So first of all, I want everyone to be able to see everyone's submissions, but I don't need to do that. I could say, sure, everyone that's an owner or an author of an application, they get to see all of them, but everyone else only gets to see ones that they've created. So that's an option that we could pick. I'm going to say anyone in this case. Who can delete rows? Only owners and authors. Results location. I'm going to say that is inline results as opposed to being in a dialog box. And this is the one I wanted to change particularly. So how the summary view is displayed is controlled by this setting here. So rather than this sort of dynamic table, I'm going to say simple list. And you see on my phone, it's already changed over to that new one. And I can play with the settings and see what they all do. And same in the desktop view, it's changed the way that it displays those settings. So let me just add one more in using my phone. And that way, and I'm going to change my location on this one so that we can see a couple of different ones. Describe the on the wall. Is the graffiti offensive? Not. Some may say it's offensive. Add my photos. Choose from the library. I'm just going to pick 2 of my photos. Add those in. First name, Lucy. Lucy Life at. Can you see how that red error message is coming up? Because I haven't yet typed in the full email. As soon as I do, then it now understands that. Okay, so I'm ready to submit. And we should see, it's got 2 photos to upload, so it might take a few seconds, but then we should see the left-hand side updating. There we go. And there we are. So we've got now multiple submissions. Anyone with the app can submit and we can see them in this centralized view. But remember that the second part of this training is not just to capture the digital form itself, but actually to add in mapping. So I'm going to do that now, and you'll be able to see how that displays on the phone too. Okay, so down the bottom, I'm going to add content again, and this time I'm going to pick this advanced map component from there. It's going to default the location, which we don't really care about at the moment, because what I really want is for this map to show the locations of the graffiti. And I can configure that by pulling out this drawer and saying add a layer, choose the data source. So this is an existing application. I need to tell it which. I can pull off any other application, but in this time I'm telling it about myself here, graffiti reporting app, and then there's only one application on there that's of use to me, which is the My Report one. So I add that layer, and we should see it picks up my 2 locations immediately. So it's that quick to get a map showing my user data that's captured above here. If I then finally go to my mobile phone, you'll be able to see that is already available. So oops, my phone's just moved over. Okay, so now we can see that it's done something very similar. If I open up the deeper view on the map, you can see it's got my 2 pins of the 2 location. If I click on a pin, it takes me to the submission that's been received. So again, I can edit this, but I can limit who can read and who can update the information, and it is quick as that. So what we've been able to do is we've been able to design a new digital form for crowdsourcing of graffiti reports. We saw straight away how that digital form can quickly be made available without people having to download a new version of the app from the App Store. Then we added in a mapping layer which linked that data that user data into a map view, and then we saw how that appears straight away in the application itself. And it is as quick as that. And there's obviously lots of examples of this, but let's leave it there for now. Thank you very much.